Back in 2020, Thai production company Filmmania announced plans for a TV adaptation of KinnPorsche, a popular online novel written by writing duo Demi. This announcement alone generated a lot of media buzz, and as a result, the show's casting call became a widely publicized event. Twitter fans spammed hashtags pleading Filmmania to cast their favorite actors in the project, but in the end, the company settled on two lesser-known actors.
อาโป ณัฐวิน วัฒนกิติพัฒน์ ใหม่ ภาคภูมิ ร่มไทรทอง
Apo had acted in several lakons, so he clearly had the acting chops for the role. Mile, on the other hand, was a little bit of a wild card. A wealthy socialite, he dabbled in acting here and there, but had nowhere near the amount of experience as his co-star. According to some articles, he got the role thanks to his chemistry with Apo, whom he apparently knew from university. It's also rumored that the web novel's authors based Kinn off of Miles' public persona, but I can't find a definitive source for this claim, so take it with a grain of salt. Anyway, production for KinnPorsche went great for a few months. Filmmania finalized the cast and, in early 2021, released a whopping 9-minute mock trailer. Some ranty YouTubers raised concerns about the large cast and vague timeline of events, but for the most part, people flipped their absolute shit over this trailer. No Thai BL had ever attempted to tell a story this grand with this level of production. And this was just a mock trailer. Imagine what the actual show was going to be like. Needless to say, fans couldn't wait to see what KinnPorsche had in store. And then the show got cancelled. Well, it wasn't exactly cancelled, more like banished to development hell. Allegedly, the authors disapproved of Filmmania's changes to the story and revoked their adaptation rights. Having lost its production studio, KinnPorsche was booted back to square one. To move forward, the show would have to find a company willing to start production from scratch. Unsurprisingly, this proved extremely difficult, and for a few months, it looked as if KinnPorsche wouldn't be getting off the ground. But miraculously, in August of 2021, an obscure studio called Beyond Cloud somehow scraped together enough money to save KinnPorsche from the depths of development hell. As we know now, this company didn't acquire the rights to KinnPorsche by chance. Before KinnPorsche, Mile, rolling in cash, wealthy socialite Mile, was friends with an event coordinator named Pond. Now, the details are a bit murky here, but it looks an awful lot like Pond founded a talent agency for the express purpose of representing Mile in those initial casting calls. As Tumblr user Brofisting writes, the company was essentially Mile and Pond in a fake mustache and trench coat. Love the name, by the way. Naturally, after Filmmania dropped KinnPorsche, Mile proposed that his company acquire the rights to the show. Having absolutely no experience in the television industry, Pond immediately agreed and got to work hiring the best writers and directors that Miles' money could buy. And against all odds, this slapdash plan actually worked. The final lineup for KinnPorsche's crew included screenwriters for Bad Buddy and My School President. But the most promising addition to the show was Krista, a filmmaker with 10+ years of experience writing and directing action-adventure flicks.
ประสบการณ์สูงสุดแหละที่จริงตอนนั้นก็คิดอยู่แล้วเราอยากได้ภาพแบบนี้แต่จิ๊กซอว์ใครล่ะในประเทศไทยที่จะเหมาะที่สุดก็คิดว่าพอคุยพี่ขมลงตัวมาก
In short, KinnPorsche was shaping up to be an absolutely incredible series. And then it wasn't. But what makes this show such a disappointment, and why has it caused so much controversy? All of these questions and more will be answered over the course of this incoherent fever dream of a video essay, and by the end I'll hopefully have explained how the show fell so catastrophically short. So, clearly I'm not a big fan of this show. I'm spending an unholy amount of time talking about why I don't like it. That said, KinnPorsche Episode 1 is a flat-out phenomenal piece of television. The opening scene has so much energy, transitioning effortlessly between Kinn and Porsche as they go about their nightly activities. What's more, characterization and world building are happening right under our noses. From the first few minutes alone, we can gather that Kinn is whip-smart yet arrogant, while Porsche is a compassionate playboy with a deeply ingrained moral compass. And the best part is, the show never pauses itself to tell us this information. We learn about their personalities simply by watching them interact with the world around them. It's just flawless indirect characterization. Most importantly, Episode 1 doesn't waste any time setting up the story. Within the first 5 minutes, Porsche saves Kinn, leading to Kinn's father learning about Porsche, leading to Kinn hiring Porsche, and boom, there's our inciting incident for our main plot. This is a brilliant example of efficient storytelling, hinting at the main conflict while giving us this great little nugget of a subplot involving Kin and the Italian mafia. It's great. So let's recap. We've got solid character building, foreshadowing for the main conflict, and outstanding performances to top it all off. I'm sure the next episode will be just as... Oh. Generally speaking, KinnPorsche fans consider episode 2 to be the weakest in the series, and for good reason. It's a mind-numbing slog that lacks any of the suspense or liveliness of the previous episode. But it's important we examine its flaws since it introduces us to many of the writing issues that plague the rest of the show. For starters, the episode is basically a compilation of skits that don't really do anything to progress the story, which is a bit of a problem considering that we don't know what KinnPorsche's story is just yet. Sure, episode 1 teases a link between Kon and Porsche, and Kin clearly has his fair share of enemies. There's potential for a really interesting story here. But for some reason, episode 2 fails to expand on any of the ideas introduced in the previous episode. Despite the show supposedly being about the mafia underworld, we learn basically nothing about the main family, what they do, or why they have such a terrible reputation. The writers apparently thought it was more important to show Porsche pee in his boss's koi pond. Listen, KinnPorsche could have easily been a collection of funny one-shots, and that would have been fine. But the first episode explicitly tells viewers to expect an overarching story, and neglecting that story in favor of this overindulgent nonsense is poor time management, plain and simple. A show like KinnPorsche should ideally set up its main plot in the first few episodes, but for one reason or another, KinnPorsche's first half fails to establish much of anything. Our main characters just sort of hang out, doing comedic bits and plot lines that don't go anywhere. Rewatching the show now, knowing that the writers cram almost every major story beat into the last 4 episodes, makes this problem especially frustrating. Like, seriously, guys, what were you doing? It's not like these episodes are complete garbage either. Some of the scenes between Porsche and the other bodyguards are really cute, and a lot of the relationship and character building going on is pretty solid. But it becomes difficult to enjoy these scenes once you realize that the show could have used this time to explore Porsche's mysterious past or Kin's beef with the Italian mafia. Or, established the plot instead of putting it off until the second to last episode. So as you're treated to yet another montage of Tankun bar hopping with his bodyguards, you can't help getting a little exasperated. Unfortunately, these filler scenes also negatively impact KinnPorsche's tone. The show advertises itself as a dark mafia romance, but its comedic scenes eat up so much runtime that it ends up feeling closer to a romantic comedy. Now, this isn't such a problem in itself. I could see the show really working as a lighthearted spin on a mafia romance. However, the writers really want you to hold on to the idea that KinnPorsche is mature and edgy, so the tone gets super dark in brief bursts, leading to some serious tonal dissonance. Like, as soon as you've grown acclimated to the show's humor, the tone shifts again, and suddenly Porsche is contemplating the ethics of torturing a rival gang member. KinnPorsche's tonal problem is especially evident in episodes 4 through 5, in which Porsche is drugged and assaulted twice within 15 minutes. Now, of course it's okay for media to depict sexual assault, but does KinnPorsche's story really warrant something this dark? I mean, the show markets itself as a mature drama, but the last 2 episodes were basically just Porsche getting up to shenanigans with his bodyguard friends. So this sudden shift in tone feels pretty jarring to say the least. And to make matters worse, the script pokes fun at Porsche's trauma. When he attempts to comfort Porsche, Pete reveals that he too was punished by his boss for getting drugged on the job. On its face, this is a completely innocuous comment. However, since Pete uses really vague language here, Porsche assumes he's talking about being sexually assaulted.
ครั้งก่อนคุณหนูแทนคุณให้กูนั่งเก้าอี้ลมเป็นวันๆครั้งแรกที่มึงบอกคือโดนส้ม
As evidenced by the goofy music that plays throughout this scene, this bit of dialogue is intended to get chuckles from the audience, and Porsche, an assault victim, is the punchline. Some argue that since Pete doesn't know about Porsche's situation, he can't intentionally make light of his trauma, which is fair, but while Pete doesn't know what happened, the writers do, and it should go without saying that reducing a traumatizing experience to the butt of a joke is fucking disgusting. We'll talk more about the show's depiction of sexual assault later. Hang in there, folks. That said, I don't want this video to be misinterpreted as a broad condemnation of slapstick humor in Thai shows. Yes, Southeast Asian comedy tends to be crude by Western standards, but of course, that doesn't mean that it can't work to a show's advantage. Countless Thai films and shows incorporate slapstick and remain tonally consistent. The Iron Ladies, one of the best LGBT dramedies ever made, is both hilarious and deeply affecting. Hell, even The Gifted, a critically acclaimed series about a dystopian government brainwashing children, has crude humor. The key here is balance. Sure, the characters occasionally goof off, they're high schoolers, but no one's cracking jokes after Pang nearly kills his best friend. The humor in these instances feels natural in the context of the story and never interrupts emotionally heavy moments. The sad thing is, KinnPorsche has quite a few well-executed jokes. The crude humor in episode 1, for example, is mostly perfectly fine. This gag is an example of quick, slapstick, I can't believe that just happened comedy, and it's perfect. Firstly, the scene serves as a nice bit of characterization. Porsche is an amateur fighter, so it makes sense that he fights dirty. But more importantly, the scene occurs at a natural point in the story and doesn't feel like the executive producers were holding the writers at gunpoint, demanding they cram more jokes into the show. I'll restate my original point. Darker series can and should incorporate humor to some degree, but you still have to assign an appropriate level of gravity to emotionally heavy scenes, especially those that discuss issues with real-life implications. Otherwise, you risk accidentally trivializing sensitive topics or giving viewers tonal whiplash. But time and again, KinnPorsche does exactly that. And as I mentioned earlier, these poorly timed jokes eat up so much runtime that the characters and plot barely have room to breathe. Well, let's be charitable. On several occasions the show fails, to set up story arcs. But the show is structured in such a way that most of these potentially interesting plotlines never receive closure. For example, in the opening scene of episode 1, Kin accuses the leader of the Italian mafia, just go with it, of stealing profits from his family's casino. This is also one of the few times the writers give us any indication of what Kin's family actually does for a living, but I digress. This scene implies that Kin's partnership with Don is extremely fragile, and that many gangs don't take him seriously due to his sexual orientation.
Still you found gelato?
So, by accusing Don of theft, Kin has essentially declared war against this rival gang. This is unironically a great setup for a story arc. Watching this episode, I thought to myself, oh, cool, so the next few episodes are going to be about Kin proving himself to be a powerful leader by taking out the Italian mafia. And then, finally, in episode 7, Porsche and Vegas kill Don while Kin recovers from a gunshot wound off screen. What could have been an interesting storyline about Kin coming into his own is resolved instantly without him having to lift a finger. To make matters worse, there's no build-up to this resolution. Don is completely absent from the show for episodes 2 through 6. Like, he's not even mentioned by name. At the beginning of episode 7, one of Kin's bodyguards suddenly announces that smaller gangs are starting to rebel, and apparently it's Don's fault, so now they have to go kill him.
มันต้องมีคนอยู่เบื้องหลังเพราะว่าพวกตัวเล็กๆคงไม่กล้าขนาดเนี้ย
คนที่น่าสงสัยที่สุดคือดอน
Somehow Palpatine returned.
Like, did the writers just forget that Don was trying to kill Kin in the pilot episode? Or was Don patiently waiting off screen while Kin and Porsche went mountain climbing? This bait-and-switch technique unfortunately becomes a trademark of KinnPorsche. The show occasionally sets up narrative arcs really well, but never allows them to reach satisfactory conclusions. I feel like this is something I would write if I was off my ADHD meds. Just when you think the writers have settled on a storyline, they suddenly switch gears and focus on something else. Here's another example. For the first 3 or so episodes, Porsche periodically remembers that he hates his job, which is understandable since families like Kin's extorted and abused his family for years. And honestly, Porsche reconciling his attraction to Kin with his hatred of loan sharks is a super interesting internal conflict. But once again, the writers abandoned this character arc after only a couple of episodes. No joke, after episode 4, Porsche has no problem working for an organization that destroyed his life. In a way, this oversight is even more insulting than the show forgetting about Don, because Porsche hating the mafia is like a core aspect of his character, and it barely comes up after episode 3. Rewatching these early episodes knowing how the series ends makes this character shift even more jarring, but we'll talk more about that later. So far, we've talked about how KinnPorsche misspends its runtime and neglects to set up important story elements. But what is that story exactly? In order to fully understand where KinnPorsche went wrong, we need to take a closer look at the story it's trying to tell. In the series' final 4 episodes, we learn that KinnPorsche's main conflict is about Porsche discovering the truth behind his parents' fatal car crash. As I mentioned earlier, episode 1 alludes to Kin's father having shady reasons for hiring Porsche. This is finally readdressed in episode 12, in which Porsche suspects Kin of having an affair and eavesdrops on his conversation with the loan shark.
มึงคิดจะนอกใจกูเหรอไอ้คิน มึงเจอกูแน่
By chance, the loan shark mentions that he was hired by Kin's family to harass Porsche for money, forcing him to accept Kin's job offer. Credit where it's due, this is an interesting turn of events. However, it's incredibly frustrating that Porsche learns about Kin's actions by sheer coincidence. Something that I neglected to mention earlier is that Kin's younger brother Kim spends about 10 episodes investigating Porsche's family. Having some remaining faith in Kim Porsche's writers, I assumed that Kim would eventually roll up to the compound and reveal that Kin duped Porsche into becoming a bodyguard. But for reasons I can't even begin to understand, Kim's corkboard conspiracy stuff basically never comes up after episode 10. Porsche finds out about Kin's plan to hire him by complete coincidence, and Kim is effectively rendered pointless by the plot. Guys, you had a perfectly good character right there and you completely wasted him. Stop doing that. While we're on the subject, Kim is yet another example of Kim Porsche's lack of tonal consistency. Like in episode 10, we're in the middle of this incredibly tense standoff between Kin and Porsche, and the show abruptly cuts to Kim and Porsche having a fun little guitar session. Of course, there's nothing inherently bad about Kim and Porsche's storyline, however, their scenes take place within a show that advertises itself as a dark mafia romance. So, it's a little disorienting when scenes lifted straight from Bad Buddy start appearing in a show about Thailand's criminal underbelly. It's also really weird that the show cast a minor 9 years Jeffs Jr. to play his love interest, but we'll discuss Beyond Cloud's shitty management in more detail later. We'll get there, I promise. Anyway, after being confronted by Porsche, Kin claims that he only acted on his father's behalf and suggests that they talk to him for answers. And then this happens.
แกอยากรู้เรื่องไหนก่อน ระหว่างเรื่องที่หลอกให้แกมาทำงานบอดี้การ์ดกับเรื่องที่พ่อแม่แกถูกรถชน
After 12 episodes of pointless nonsense, our main characters have to make decisions with actual stakes. Porsche can either stay in the compound or take revenge for his parents' murders. Likewise, Kin has to reckon with his father's actions and ultimately decide between supporting his family and his boyfriend. So, although this twist is a little predictable, it lays the groundwork for a show-stopping finale where Kin and Porsche have to take opposite sides. Now, that said, this reveal doesn't feel earned in the context of the show because it never prompts Porsche or the audience to question what happened to his parents. Kong gives this long expository speech completely unprompted, which doesn't exactly make for compelling television. Here's how I'd personally fix this problem. Have Porsche investigate his parents' car crash in detail over the course of the series. This change would not only give Porsche more agency in the story, but also make the big twist so much more impactful. Imagine Porsche's and the audience's horror when he realizes what happened to his parents, and you know what? Can someone just write a version of this show on AO3? But that aside, this scene effectively jumpstarts the plot of the show. After Porsche storms out of the compound, we cut to Vegas being sad about his pet hedgehog. But when the plot resumes 30 minutes later, things get super interesting again. Kin tells Porsche that he's leaving the family business, and you think, oh cool, so the final episode is going to be this intense face-off between Kin and his corrupt father. This would not only set the stage for an explosive finale with real dramatic stakes, but also give Kin's character arc a satisfying conclusion. The show constantly implies that Kin is unhappy with life in the mafia.
แต่ถ้ามึงอยู่บ้านตัวเองอะแค่มึงกระดิกนิ้วมึงก็ได้ทุกอย่างมาแล้ว
มึงคิดว่ากูชอบชีวิตแบบนั้นเหรอ ตอนกูได้ยินเสียงคนข้างบน แวบแรกกูแม่งไม่อยากออกจากป่าเลยว่ะ
So having him split from the main family to start over with Porsche makes perfect sense for his character. The show seems to be heading in this direction until Kon suddenly shows up at Porsche's condo to apologize, and Porsche, well, he forgives him, no questions asked. And of course, now that Porsche is okay with the mafia, Kin has no issue rejoining. Seeing Porsche almost instantly forgive the man who hid his parents' murderer is extremely disconcerting, to say the least. But unfortunately, the story only goes downhill from here. Soon after Porsche reconciles with the main family, yet another character appears to tell Porsche more plot-relevant information completely unprompted. And one gunfight later, Kon drops yet another bombshell on our main characters. Porsche's parents weren't killed in a car crash. They were murdered by Vegas's father, Gun. Apparently, Porsche's mother was adopted by the Tirapanyako family, and her brother wasn't too happy about her marrying someone outside of the clan. Man, Freud would have a field day with this. Now, First of all, Kin and Porsche being pseudo-cousins makes me extremely uncomfortable.
Anytime you have to say, it's not incest, technically, that's not great, Ryan.
But ignoring the incest and clumsy exposition, wow, what a phrase, this twist really doesn't work to the show's advantage. Con makes sense as Kim Porsche's primary antagonist because he's an intimidating character with a real presence in previous episodes. Unlike Gunn, who appears for less than 30 minutes across 14 episodes and wears khaki shorts to a mob fight. Not only is Gunn not intimidating, he hasn't actually been on screen enough for us to care about him. Con, on the other hand, has a legitimately threatening presence and Kin's trust. Had he killed Porsche's parents instead of Gunn, Kin would be forced to seriously reevaluate his relationships, making for an incredibly interesting conflict. But instead, the villain is just some guy who Kin wants to kill anyway. But so begins the final episode of Kim Porsche the series. And it's, well, so you can probably tell from the title of this section that I'm not the biggest fan of Kim Porsche's finale. That said, episode 14 starts with a fucking bang. Con dies from being poisoned, Kin and his brothers are in shambles, and Gunn takes the opportunity to invade the main family's compound. What follows is an expertly choreographed fight scene that reestablishes Kin Porsche as a nail-biting action thriller. Characters we've grown attached to are dying left and right, Vegas uses some guy's face as a ballistic shield, and in a truly amazing twist, Erica, you know, the gun lady from episode 2, comes out from behind her desk and goes full DEFCON 3 on Vegas's men. It's glorious. Erica is the best character in the entire show, and it's not even close. Argue with the wall. Even Tong-kun gets his time to shine. He and Arm strap a bomb to a toy car and use it to help Kin and Porsche escape from Vegas. It's amazing. Still would have been nice if the villain had more of a presence in previous episodes, or if the story was established earlier, but the bottom line is, the first half of Kim Porsche's finale is fucking incredible. But in a truly strange turn of events, the action grinds to a complete halt at the 45-minute mark so Gunn can explain more plot stuff to Kin and Porsche instead of killing them while he has the chance. He claims that Con was the one who killed Porsche's family, effectively untwisting the plot twist from earlier in the episode. But less than 5 minutes later, Con, who somehow didn't die from being poisoned, comes back in to say no, it really was Gunn. Except no, he didn't really kill all of them because Con secretly kept Porsche's mom alive in a secret bunker that we didn't know about until this scene. Who thought this was a good idea? This clusterfuck of a finale is the final nail in the show's coffin. Firstly, the action pauses for an astounding amount of time so characters can stand around and explain things, which completely destroys the momentum of the episode. But more importantly, the plot twists and untwists itself so many times in such a short period that it damages viewers' investment in the story. One easy solution to this problem would just be to make Con the villain from the get-go. Don't make Con's brother the murderer, then tell us it was really Con all along, then change your mind again and re-establish Gunn as the antagonist. It almost feels like the showrunners are dangling a carrot on a string in front of viewers, building suspense and then switching course just as things get interesting. Another incredibly frustrating aspect of this finale is that it reduces Kin and Porsche to passive spectators of the story. Like, sure, they're present for the mob brawl, but really, what does this scene accomplish besides showing off how badass Erica is? Rest in peace, comrade. Kin and Porsche don't kill any major baddies and walk away mostly unscathed. And in the end, neither main character kills the main antagonist. Con, the real main character, does it for them. So I guess my question is, if your main characters have little to no agency in a story supposedly about them, then what was even the point? Why not just make a show about Con for fuck's sake? And that's another thing about this finale. It is worryingly sympathetic to a man who imprisoned his sister for over 2 decades. The show attempts to justify his behavior by saying that he was hiding her from Gunn, who at some point sexually assaulted her. But this logic falls apart when you think about it for more than 2 seconds. If Con really cared for Nampung, why didn't he just kill his shitty-ass brother when he had the chance? At the very least, he could have relocated her to another country instead of keeping her in solitary confinement for 20 fucking years. And just to top it all off, the show ends with Con crowning Porsche as the new leader of the main family. Because why not at this point? And of course, Porsche accepts, apparently forgetting that the group's previous leader killed his father and assaulted his mother. But even if Gunn hadn't personally destroyed Porsche's family, this still wouldn't make sense given what we know about Porsche's character. As a kid, he was forced to borrow money from organized crime groups to get by. Predatory lenders would come to his house every week asking for money, often resorting to violence if he didn't give them what they wanted. So why the hell would Porsche suddenly want to work for a company that extorts families just like his? It just feels wrong, like the writers were wildly grasping at straws trying to figure out a satisfying conclusion. At this point, I really wouldn't be surprised if they just thought Kin and Porsche looked nice in matching suits. Bottom line is, this finale could have been great, but the show sabotages itself so many times, flip-flopping between antagonists, adding twist after unnecessary twist, that it becomes a chore to get through. Any plotlines introduced in episode 1 have either devolved into convoluted narrative webs involving Khan and Gunn, or disappeared from the show entirely. Most disappointingly, our main characters have virtually no impact on the story's outcome. As the credits roll, you're left wondering, what was even the point? Or, if you're like me, how did such a promising premise turn into this? So, in my very brief summary of Kim Porsche's production problems, I neglected to mention something very important about the show's creative team. Kim Porsche has not one, not two, but 3 different directors. To be clear, having multiple directors isn't necessarily uncommon practice in the television industry. Shooting an episode is just one tiny sliver of the work that goes into creating a television series. Pre- and post-production can take anywhere from 3 to 6 weeks, with the former being especially time-consuming, so it makes sense for a show to have a rotating cast of writers and directors to ensure an efficient workflow. For this model to work properly, however, all of the directors need to have a unified vision for the show. Otherwise, it'll devolve into a jumble of clashing themes and ideas, which is exactly what happened with Kin Porsche. TV series with multiple directors typically divide work into episodes. Director A gets episodes 1 through 3, Director B gets episodes 4 through 6, etc. By contrast, Pepsi, Pond, and Krista co-directed each episode of Kin Porsche. Now, we can't know exactly how this played out on set, so take my theory with a grain of salt. But behind-the-scenes material strongly suggests that each director handled a specific number of scenes per episode. Moreover, these scenes were probably assigned to each director according to his or her strengths and weaknesses. Krista specializes in action films, so he likely oversaw most of the fight scenes. Meanwhile, former GMMTV director Pepsi focused more on the dialogue-heavy portions.
ก็แอคชั่นเราก็ทำมาเยอะเนาะแต่คราวนี้มันก็มีโจทย์ว่าแอคชั่นให้มันมีโรแมนติกกันในแอคชั่นด้วยอย่างเงี้ย
พี่เป็นคนชอบเรื่องความสัมพันธ์ใช่ป่ะแล้วมันมีความสัมพันธ์ของคู่หนึ่งในเรื่องนี้มันต้องมีทั้งเรื่องความสัมพันธ์เรื่องของอารมณ์เรื่องของแอคชั่นยังต้องมีแบบเทคนิคอยู่ด้วยอ่ะ
This division of responsibilities could very well explain the show's inconsistent tone. Krista and Pepsi are both insanely talented, that much is for certain. However, they have wildly different backgrounds and experience levels. Kim Porsche is Pepsi's sole directing credit. For comparison, Krista has 8, and more importantly, he's been writing and directing action flicks for about as long as I've been alive. On the other hand, Pepsi had only been an assistant director on lighthearted rom-coms before coming on to Kin Porsche. To be clear, I'm not doubting her talents. She's worked on some really great stuff, including 2 of my favorite Thai BLs, Bad Buddy and Dark Blue Kiss. However, I wonder if she was suited to direct a show with such dark subject matter. When you consider her and Krista's incredibly divergent backgrounds, the show's abrupt tonal shifts start to make a lot more sense. Especially if these directors were going off into their own corners to film and edit portions of an episode, there probably weren't many opportunities for communication. So when it came time to merge these scenes, the end product wasn't always entirely cohesive. If true, my theory would explain why certain episodes feel like 2 shows with their scenes shuffled together. If not, well, I guess the writers just collectively agreed that the show should cut between scenes of Pete getting his balls electrocuted and Kim Porsche farting on each other. No, I'm not kidding, that literally happens in episode 11. In any case, these tonal inconsistencies don't make for a very enjoyable show and indicate some serious communication problems between the show's creative leads. However, the directors aren't solely responsible for how the show turned out. No, many of Kim Porsche's deeper story problems stem from the original novel. Hey guys, this section discusses some pretty heavy stuff, so here's a timestamp in case you want to skip ahead. So it turns out that most of what I complained about in this video originates from Damie's original web novel, from the unsatisfying story arcs to the rapid-fire plot twists. And considering that Damie had a significant role in the show's production, the showrunners likely couldn't stray too far from the original story. Even with these obstacles though, the show does manage to slightly improve on the novel. For starters, episode 1 at least attempts to show some connection between Porsche and the Mafia. Like I said, the show doesn't address this again until episode 12, but I mean, A+ for effort. The novel, on the other hand, doesn't even mention this plot point until like chapter 42 of 44. So, I mean, comparatively speaking, KinnPorsche is pretty well paced. Besides these changes though, the show largely sticks to the same plot beats as the original novel, which isn't exactly a good thing. Let's just rip off the band-aid, shall we? In the novel, Kinn and Porsche's romantic relationship is the result of rape. In chapter 15, Vegas drugs and assaults Porsche before Kinn comes to the rescue, but just a few paragraphs later, he takes advantage of Porsche too. And to make matters worse, the writing style indicates that the authors intended this scene to be romantic. It's awful, but it's also the catalyst for Kinn and Porsche's relationship, so of course it weaseled its way into the TV adaptation. Granted, the show's version of events is a lot less disturbing. At the very least, Kinn deeply regrets taking advantage of Porsche, and the show attempts, keyword being attempts, to show Porsche's trauma. But there's still something deeply uncomfortable about the show's portrayal of sexual assault. Not only is this sex scene between Kinn and Porsche incredibly graphic, it uses soft piano music and gentle, hazy lighting, implying that what's happening on screen is somehow sexy or romantic. In a similar vein, KinnPorsche completely brushes over Vegas's weird behavior towards Pete and Porsche. Granted, he isn't a beacon of morality, but he's clearly written to be a sympathetic character, which feels a little bit uncomfortable considering his history of sexual assault. Even more disturbingly, the show's last act tries to convince viewers that Vegas's sexual aggression is the result of daddy issues, and that his victim, Pete, can fix him by being his live-in therapist. Listen, having a morally transgressive character isn't necessarily a bad idea, but by writing off Vegas's behavior as the result of bad parenting, the show comes dangerously close to trivializing and/or excusing sexual assault. Like, are we really trying to give a serial rapist a redemption arc? The recent allegations against Damie make the show's portrayal of sexual assault even more disturbing. To be clear, our fictional fantasies don't always reflect our behavior in real life. But I can't help noticing how a majority of relationships and sex scenes in KinnPorsche involve dubious consent and power imbalances. Porsche is Kinn's servant, Pete is Vegas's prisoner, Porsche is Kim's student, etc., etc. After a while, the show starts to feel like the author's sick power fantasy. That's all I'm going to say about Damie and Beyond Cloud for now, as I believe such a sensitive topic deserves a video all its own. For a more thorough breakdown of Damie's fall from grace, I suggest checking out Moon Consort's video, link for which will be in the description. Bottom line is, I don't think I'd let these authors anywhere near a writer's room, not only because they're bad writers, but also because they're bad people. And the fact that their work has achieved such levels of fame, well, it doesn't exactly bode well for the future of the genre, does it? The Thai BL industry is kind of infamous at this point for milking concepts. For example, after SOTUS made it big, Thailand produced 1,000 billion more rom-coms about engineering students. Two Moons, Love by Chance, Kiss Me Again, Why Are You, Oxygen, End of Love, My Engineer. Okay, now this is just getting ridiculous. Clearly though, this business model is pretty reliable. Whenever a show goes viral, its production company can bank off of its success until the next big thing comes along. Wash, rinse, repeat. But what happens when a show that glamorizes sexual assault makes it big? Well, we get this.
โอ้ยหลับไม่ตื่นเลย ไหน ดูสิ ถ้าคลิปนี้หลุดออกไปเนี่ย จะยังมีคนชอบมึงอยู่ปะ
Before Star Hunter Entertainment sues me for libel, no, I'm not accusing Big Dragon the series of plagiarism. The mafia bodyguard trope certainly isn't unique to KinnPorsche, and besides, Big Dragon is based on a pre-existing web novel. That said, the show definitely piggybacked off of KinnPorsche's success. Even their promotional posters are similar, like, it's really easy to tell where they got their inspiration from. But the similarities don't end there. Like in KinnPorsche, sexual assault serves as the main catalyst for the character's relationship. In Big Dragon, however, the main character alone roofies and assaults his partner. It's almost like the show is playing a game of telephone with KinnPorsche, preserving its basic plot but amplifying its worst qualities. These parallels interest me though, because it reveals how the BL industry interpreted Kim Porsche's success. I don't think it's a coincidence that Big Dragon takes Kim Porsche's non-canon elements and ramps them up to 11. Because from the showrunner's perspective, that's what made Kim Porsche so successful. And honestly, they're completely justified in that opinion. While the show was airing, I saw countless thirst traps using footage of Kin assaulting Porsche. And sure, the fans who made those edits are partially responsible here, but let me ask you, would this have happened if the show took a clear stance against sexual assault? Well, probably. There's always going to be weirdos who think stuff like that is totally normal and cool, but I'd argue that a vast majority of fans will be less inclined to post sexy edits of rape scenes if the show portrayed them in an explicitly negative light. But what am I trying to get at here, really? Am I suggesting that Kim Porsche should have just shown super functional, healthy relationships? Am I a prude who can't stand the thought of shows having morally gray characters? Well, no. But I do believe that TV shows have somewhat of an obligation to portray morally questionable scenarios with an appropriate level of nuance. Otherwise, we'll end up with shows that excuse or fetishize sexual assault. Maybe it seems unfair to pin these trends on one show, but while Kim Porsche is far from the first BL to have questionable content, it is by far the most popular. And if we don't examine and criticize its flaws now, we'll continue to see them in other shows for years to come. Thank you so much for watching. Hey guys, I just wanted to say thank you for sticking by me during this incredibly weird time for me while I'm finishing my schoolwork and I'm trying to get out videos. I really appreciate it. I know I have not been posting as much lately, but I'm gonna really, try to keep this channel going when I can. So hopefully this is gonna be like the last really heavy video for a while. I think my next one is gonna be a little more silly, more lighthearted, so be looking forward to that. So I just wanted to, while I'm here, promote my Twitter. I have a Twitter. It's Pastelin with 3 L's because someone already took the one with 2. Also, I do have a Ko-fi, and I'll be linking that in this end card here. Of course, you'll have no obligation to support me monetarily. It's just, if you feel called, I really appreciate it. But yeah, that's all I have for now. Thank you so much for watching this video, and I'll see you soon.